Revelation chapter 12. Revelation chapter 12. We had gotten down through verse 11 in our discussion on Wednesday night, and that's more or less where we'll pick up this morning. But before we begin, let's go to God in prayer. Father, we want to thank you for all the blessings that you've given to us. We are thankful for this time of study this morning. We are grateful for the truths that are depicted throughout not only Revelation, but throughout all of your word, as you are the victorious God who sits upon the eternal throne. We recognize, as we are your people, that we have nothing to fear because you reign and rule completely. We love you, Lord. We are thankful for this time. Pray you'd continue to be with our shepherds as they lead us, and pray that you would give us opportunities to teach your gospel to this lost world. We also pray, Lord, you would be with the Banks family and many others through this time. We love you, Lord, and we ask this all in Christ's name. Amen. Revelation chapter 12. Verse 7 begins the discussion about the war in heaven between Michael and the angels and the dragon and his angels. And as they fight this great conflict, Satan, that great dragon, and his angels are cast down to the earth. In verse 11 and 12, they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of their testimony, and they did not love their lives to the death. Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you, having great wrath, because he knows that he only has a short time. Now, as we discussed briefly, verse 11 is a description of those who overcame. The brethren, introduced in verse 10, they overcame him, that is the dragon, from verse 10, the accuser that's mentioned there. So they overcame by the blood of the Lamb, by the word of their testimony, because they did not love their lives to the death. They had accepted, they had obeyed the gospel of Jesus Christ. They had committed themselves to that word and to that testimony, to that lifestyle. And because of their allegiance to the Lamb, they were willing to die if need be. And because of that, they were overcomers. So, verse 12, as a response to that, he says, "Therefore rejoice, O heavens, and you who dwell in them." Because of the great victory through Christ and the great victory over death and over the accuser, they could rejoice, and there was much cause to rejoice. There seems to be a little bit of a contrast, if you'll notice. He says, "Rejoice, heavens, and you who dwell in them," and then seems by contrast to say, "Woe to those inhabitants of the earth and the sea." Those who dwell in heaven, or maybe even you could think of those who anticipate dwelling in heaven. Either way, they have cause to rejoice because the Lamb was victorious. The Lamb overcame the accuser. The Lamb cast him down and destroyed him and bound him. And so now those who stand with the Lamb, they can confidently rejoice in the victory through the Lamb. And then by contrast, those who dwell on the earth. Woe to those who dwell on the earth, the inhabitants of the earth and the sea. You could take those heaven dwellers, essentially, as those who overcame the Great Tribulation as well. It's possible you could look at it like that. It really makes no difference. What we have is a contrast between those who've submitted and obeyed the Lamb, those who have not, those who have rejected, ignored, and avoided it. So he says, woe. This has nothing to do with the three woes from the cry of the eagle earlier, a few chapters. This is simply a warning. You have been warned, those who inhabit the earth, the sea. And by the way, when we see that phrase, the earth and the sea, they are symbolic of the ungodly and the masses. Throughout the book, we see this contrast being given, the earth and the sea. By the way, sometimes the earth and the sea is used in a more literal sense to describe the actual earth or the actual sea. Sometimes it's used in a more figurative sense, representing the ungodly and the masses of people. And so when we see those phrases, we need to recognize that and carefully carefully understand it to be such. The world must bear the weight of Satan's awful wrath. And that's essentially what he says. He says, "Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and the sea, for the devil has come down to you having great wrath, because he knows that he has only a short time." This is a warning. Essentially, you've asked for it. Here it is, folks. The devil and his wrath. You have rejoiced in his victories, and now you can revel in his wrath. Satan, like a mad child, turns to face those he can still harm. I think for the most part, this is a subtle and very brief explanation as to why the Christians are suffering in the first place. Satan was cast down. Satan could not harm the Christ. He could not harm the woman. And so when he leads the charge against the heavens, and he is cast down by Michael and the angels, now in his fury and wrath, he turns to anywhere he can hurt someone. He turns to those who inhabit the earth and the sea, again like a mad child. He may be defeated, he may be wounded, but he is still a threat. If you want to appreciate the symbolism being used, there's nothing more dangerous than a wounded dragon. You ever seen wild animals? They always talk about this. Man, you don't walk up to a bobcat that's been hurt. Well, it's similar stuff, folks. You don't walk up to the dragon. He's wounded. He's hurt. His feelings are hurt. He's upset. He's dangerous. In fact, he may be more dangerous in a sense now than what he was before he led the charge against the hosts of heaven. Satan is limited, though. He is limited. He has this time limited to him where he can go out and he can make havoc of the world and the earth. But I want you to appreciate, it says, notice this very end of verse 12, he has this great wrath. He has come down to the sea and to the earth because he knows that he only has a short time. He's going to make the most of it. Keep in mind, by the way, this reminds us ourselves of who's really in the fight here. It's not just about the saints and Rome. It's not just about Christians and Rome. It's about Satan and God. Satan is using his allies, the Roman Empire. God is using his faithful, suffering servants, the saints. There's a lot of S's in there. That was kind of tough to pull off just then. Thank you. I saw a few smiles. All right. So as this is going on, though, we have this great conflict. And again, it's God versus Satan, the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. This is equivalent, this short time Satan has, this is equivalent to the time that God offers to those saints under the altar in chapter 6. You remember, essentially the book is an answer to the prayers from under the altar, the suffering saints in chapter 6. How long, O Lord, faithful and true, how long will you allow us to suffer before we are vindicated, before we are made victorious? Remember God's answer? A little while longer. We're talking about the same time span, folks. Same time period. A little while longer. Satan, he only has a short time. Same period of time under discussion. You're going to suffer a little while longer. The martyrs must suffer, but at the end of this suffering, Satan will be bound and cast down into the abyss. Now, anybody have any questions on that section? All right. Verse 13. Verse 13 down through verse 17. The woman persecuted. Verse 13. This is Revelation 12:13. And when the dragon saw that he had been cast to the earth, he persecuted the woman who gave birth to the male child. And the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she is nourished for a time, and times, and half a time, from the face of the serpent. And the serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon spewed out of his mouth. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring, who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. God is giving John some insight into the heavenly perspective, the scenes behind the war and the defeat of Satan. Essentially, verse 13 kind of picks back up with the woman from verse 6. She has fled into the wilderness, her plight to safety. Satan's hatred for Christ is so rich, is so powerful, it is driving this assault. He's turned his attention from Christ because he can't touch Christ. Christ has already ascended to the throne of glory. He can't do anything about it now, so he turns his attention to this woman. And he goes back to who he can affect. Remember this woman, as we discussed her earlier in chapter 12, she represents faithful, spiritual Zion, faithful of God. More or less now, post the ascension of Christ, she represents the church itself, those who are faithful to the spiritual covenant with God. And so here this woman is affected by the serpent. Verse 14. So the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness to her place, where she's nourished a time and times and half a time, notice now, from the face of the serpent. The poetic imagery is very powerful in this passage. The snake, the serpent, can't do anything to the lamb. The lamb is overpowering him. And so in a powerful demonstration throughout the war earlier in this chapter, now the woman is taken away from this serpent where he cannot harm her further. As he's going to affect her, he's going to harm her, he's going to hurt her or try to hurt her children, the God involved in the scene is delivering her. He's taking her where she can be nourished and protected by him. The carrying away the 2 wings of a great eagle, I don't know if you'll recall this, but in Exodus chapter 19 and verse 4, Israel was said to have been carried away from Egypt by God with wings like an eagle. The poetic imagery, you can't miss it. God is always there to deliver his faithful people. And just as Israel was once faithful during the Exodus, God delivered them on the wings of this eagle, poetically. Here, this woman, God's faithful of the spiritual covenant, the church, his redeemed people, they are carried away from harm by the wings of a great eagle. The wilderness that she's taken into, we've seen wilderness throughout all of biblical literature. It is a place that represents God's protections and God's provisions. By the way, there is a powerful contrast being made between this wilderness where the woman is taken to and the great city that we've read about already. The great city that represents the ungodly. It represents more than likely Rome, if we wanted to think in that way, but it really represents just the ungodly nature of the world. So we have this woman who does not flee to the great city for protection and provision. She instead goes to the place God prepared for her. She goes to the wilderness where he can take care of her, he can nourish her for time, times, and half a time from the face of the serpent. This is a spiritual deliverance, not about physical things. It's using physical terminology, but it's about a spiritual deliverance from destruction and depression. And so this woman is delivered. Now again, I want you to kind of just stick this in your back pocket for now. She is nourished for a time, times, and half a time. You just pocket that. We'll come back and talk about it later. Verse 15. The serpent spewed water out of his mouth like a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away by the flood. Flood waters used against God's people is not new in Bible language either. Throughout the Old Testament, we see this as God's people were overwhelmed by the masses, or overwhelmed by society, or overwhelmed by the nations. It's used in all those ways throughout the Bible. Isaiah 8, Isaiah 43 especially. I want you to think about this. Homer Haley worded it like this, and I think it's way more poetic than what I can muster, so I'm going to share it with you as I try to make up new words. So, the serpent tried to sweep the woman away by the river that issued out of his mouth. Delusions in the form of lies, false impressions of invincible power, false religious teachings, false philosophies, false charges, and malicious reports intended to destroy the church. To these he would add the seductive temptations of lust. Let the saint remember that everything the devil says and does is a lie, for he stands not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaks a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father thereof. But the church has withstood the assault of the serpent, because a way has been provided for her deliverance. Appreciate the poetic value of verse 15. Satan, that great serpent, has spewed lies across the face of the earth, and what the earth does is gobble it up. It absorbs it, soaks it in. Do we not see the world soaking in the lies of Satan today? You better believe it. So the devil spews these lies, but notice the woman's not bought into it. The woman recognizes it for what it is. And while the earth gobbles it up, the woman does not. There's a constant chasm between God's people and those of the earth. But that does not stop Satan from trying everything he can to drown out God's people. That's what we're looking at in verse 15. Now, verse 16 connects to that. So let's look at that one there. Verse 16. The earth helped the woman. Boy, that's a turn of events we didn't expect, is it? The earth helped the woman, and the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon spewed out of his mouth. Again, that's a turn of events we probably weren't expecting. Here's the earth, the people who reject the Lamb. They reject the Lamb. They're persecuting the woman. But now in verse 16, they're helping the woman. But by the way, they don't know they're helping the woman. All they're doing is gobbling up the lies of Satan. The world, the earth, those who have been against the Lamb and against the woman, they are helping the woman because they're opening their mouth and swallowing up the lies of the dragon. In doing so, the earth is establishing a clear distinction between the world satiated with false religion, philosophical teachings, and the church. There's a chasm between these two. The church, clothed in truth and righteousness. The earth, clothed in wickedness and immorality and ungodliness, because they keep buying into the lies of Satan. Great chasm between these two. From the viewpoint of Satan and the world, the earth's help was incidental and unintentional. But I want you to think about this. From the church's standpoint, from the redeemed standpoint, we can see the providential work of God. You see this chasm opening up. Faithful to God, unfaithful to God. They're buying the lies of Satan, swallowing up the floods, while God's redeemed see it for what it is, the truth of God at work. We have been talking about aspects of this, by the way, recently. As long as the world continues to gobble up the lies of the devil, that chasm will remain. Once the church starts accepting those lies, though, that chasm shrinks. It's a blessing. I know it doesn't feel like it sometimes, but it is a blessing to live at such a time, folks, that the contrast between the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness is so clear. You go back to the hyper-religious American society 100 years ago, ungodly and godly, there wasn't as much a difference between the two except for the very ungodly. But nowadays, that chasm is getting wider and wider between the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. Here, as John is given this vision by God, he is recognizing that the earth and God's redeemed, there is a chasm between the two. They cannot be the same people because they are not the same people. Now notice verse 17. Verse 17. And the dragon was enraged with the woman, and he went to make war with the rest of her offspring who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus Christ. As Satan has been defeated, he has been ridiculed, humiliated, and greatly weakened, he turns his attention to fully focus on the woman and on her offspring. To maybe keep with some of the other Bible poetry, the lion, he has been backed into a corner. He is fighting mad, and he is going to lash out in every direction he can. He doesn't care who he hurts. He doesn't care how he hurts them. He doesn't care if they're maimed a little or if he can kill one. He doesn't care. He just wants to get his hands on someone. That's the scene. Well, he's turned his attention to the offspring of the woman. By the way, that would be those saints, the new covenant people Those people who have put on Christ by obedience to the gospel, they are willing to live faithful to the Lamb. They are in danger. He doesn't mince words, folks. He doesn't mince words. The dragon is making war with the children of the woman. He has his sights set on these people. And now they must remain faithful to God to endure it. How do you not appreciate the poetic value of some of what we're looking at in chapter 12? Does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? Frustrations? Vent? You want to vent? Go ahead, Suzanne.
It strikes me at how intentionally evil the devil is on purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And today, I think one of the biggest lies that is perpetuated is that there really isn't inherent evil in the world. It will just treat everybody nicely. Everybody will treat you nicely.
Yeah.
And we would all get along. I'm not trying to be political.
Yeah.
But
Stop that.
I think that this points out, at least it strikes me,
Yeah.
I've never thought about it this way before, how intentionally hurtful and
Yeah.
evil he is.
Yeah.
And uses people in a same way.
Absolutely.
Intentionally try to hurt you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It reminds us, by the way, I think this is a powerful testament to the book of Revelation itself. It does not hide from the fact that evil exists. In fact, folks, it reiterates this point. Evil exists. Evil exists. That does not take it all away from the existence or the sovereignty or the goodness of God. In fact, it is the polar opposite of God. That's Satan, folks. He is the adversary. That's why he's called the adversary. Evil exists. What Revelation reminds us of is who's behind it, Satan, to what extent he is evil. We do have this false notion, and I think it maybe goes back, sympathy for the devil? There was a song about that, I think. Sympathy for the Devil and the Rolling Stones, maybe. I can't remember. But there was a song about that. We have gotten to a mindset where it's like, oh, well, we probably should just take pity on this poor old creature. No. He's the dragon of old. He is the accuser. He's the reason you and I suffer. He's behind it all. And Revelation does not dodge that bullet. In fact, it shows it plainly, clearly. Satan is at work. Evil exists. But God in His goodness and His sovereignty will stomp it out. Now, go ahead, Dennis.
Revelation reveals to us that we have a choice to make.
That we have a what?
We have a choice to make.
Yeah.
In verse 16, I haven't mentioned verse 16. But the earth jumped the woman, the earth opened its mouth and swallowed up the blood, which the dragon spewed out of his mouth. And I see that today.
If you are, I'll tell you. Mm-hmm.
But it is slowing down. It is a slowing down age.
Yeah.
And in that sense, that's helping those of us who are faithful.
Yeah. I don't necessarily think that what we're looking at in this verse is denominationalism of any kind. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand what you're saying now. I don't think that this really has anything to do with good intentions or bad intentions. Because as we see the earth being contrasted with God's people, at least in Revelation, what we're looking at is people who really hate Christians. Okay? So I don't think it's necessarily coming from a place of good intentions. I think it's incidental, at least in their minds. Again, while the Christian sees this taking place, they recognize this is providential. Does that make sense, Dennis? Okay. Anybody have any other questions on that section? Chapter 13 is one that is rich and powerful and maybe alarming in a sense. The beast is introduced a little more fully and a little more clearly. This chapter, in essence, chapter 13, in essence, is depicting how the dragon makes war with the woman and the children, her offspring. Now, I want us, we have actually alluded to this already a few times, but I want us to kind of bring it back into our minds once more. The dragon in Revelation 12 and 13 is not depicted as this cartoon creature in a red jumpsuit with a pitchfork and a forked tongue and a long pointy tail. That's not the dragon. That's not Satan at work in the world. This is the great war maker of old. And he is going to make war with God's people. He is infuriated. Every time he turns around, it's another loss. Keep in mind how many times it shows him losing in chapter 12. He makes war with God's people. He can't get the woman. Well, he sits back. He's going to try to get the woman and the child right when the child's born. He's going to get him now. No, misses his chance then. Well, he's missed all those chances, so now he's going to take the war right to the gates of heaven. He's going to charge the holy hill, and he's going to get Christ on his throne that way. And Christ doesn't even ride out to meet him. It's Michael, the archangel, who rides out with the hosts of heaven and destroys him, drives him out, casts him down. Now he's turned to the woman. He's sick to death of losing, folks. He's getting desperate. He's getting hungry. He's getting fighting mad. And so here he turns against God's people. Satan will now employ two of his greatest allies. In the book of Revelation, he is seeking to defeat and destroy God's purpose, God's people, and God's rule. And so here he's going to use Rome and imperialism, the deifying of the Roman Caesars. There's the two beasts. Some people have called this the unholy trinity, which is kind of cool. Satan with Rome and imperialism. Satan's at work. He's going to do everything he can to stomp out God's people. So let's go ahead and read verses 1 through 10, and we'll make some observations. This is Revelation 13, verse 1. And I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as if it had been wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world marveled and followed the beast. And they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And he was given a mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. And authority was given to him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell in heaven. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. And all who dwell on the earth will worship him, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb who was slain from the foundation of the world. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints. What a powerful few verses as we are seeing graphically depicted Satan and his allies, the Roman Empire. The New American Standard in verse 1 is the preferred translation here. My translation, the New King James, which is the best one. That was a joke. That was a joke. That's okay. Verse 1, mine says, And I stood on the sand of the sea. So in New King James, John, in his vision, is standing on the sea. The New American Standard says the dragon stood on the sea. Really, and I think this is why the New American Standard gets it right, where John's standing is irrelevant. Where John is standing matters very little in the discussion, because what he's talking about is the beast and who's summoning the beast, who's calling the beast and controlling the beast. Now, for the record, it changes the application of the text none at all, because the overall unmistakable point is the power behind the beast is Satan. So where John's standing there or the dragon standing there, it doesn't matter, but that would explain why some translations differ on that. In a typical apocalyptic dramatic fashion, The beast comes rising up out of the sea. When you see this beast described, it is unmistakable that he has an association with the devil. You see the way they're depicted one to the other. If you were to go back into chapter 12 and see the way the dragon is described, they are almost exactly the same, as their association is clear in the passages. Throughout the Old Testament, the sea was used to indicate many different things. Sometimes it would represent just people or masses. Sometimes it would represent nations as a whole. But either way, it is a grouping of people, and so this creature comes out from it. By the way, you can find passages that depict that. Psalm 29, 65, Isaiah 17, 57, 60, Jeremiah 49, 51, Ezekiel 26. I am taking bids, by the way. That was another joke. That's okay. Now, Daniel chapter 7 seems to connect to this quite well. If you have your Old Testament with you, this is Daniel 7, and you might stay there or mark it because we're going to look at it quite a bit at different times. Daniel chapter 7 and verses 2 and 3. Daniel spoke, this is Daniel 7 in verse 2. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea. Here we go, sea again, recognize that. And the four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. Now just kind of pocket that. Don't turn away from Daniel 7 yet, but I want you to kind of just remember that. Out of the sea, these four beasts come up in Daniel's vision. It is consistent with Bible literature to make the assumption the sea in Revelation 13 is still masses of people or at least nations, as this great creature is coming up out of the sea. And so, as he's described, this is back in Revelation 13:1, he has 7 heads, 10 horns, and 10 crowns on his horns. Both dragon and beast, okay, dragon back in chapter 12, beast here in chapter 13, are depicted essentially the same way. Intelligent, powerful, influential, authoritative, all those converge on these two creatures. They are also dangerous. Now, the same discussion needs to be made here very briefly. In chapter 12, you notice the crowns on the dragon. We talked about that briefly. That is not victory crowns, that is royalty crowns. He is the prince of darkness. He is the king of evil. Here, this is the same exact terminology. That is the Greek word diameto. Okay, and this is the word depicting royalty instead of Stephanos, which is victory crowns. That is important to remember. The beast, the dragon, they never wear crowns of victory, just crowns of royalty. And so here, there is one slight difference between these two creatures. In chapter 12, the dragon has 7 crowns on his 7 heads, but still has 10 horns. Here, the beast has 7 heads, but 10 horns and 10 crowns. Slight difference. We're never told why. It's never explained why. There's never any indication as to why. A lot of cool fan theories, but we're not going to dig into those. Essentially, the overall point is still the same. This creature is powerful. This creature is dangerous. This creature needs to be, I hate to use the word feared, maybe respected is maybe a better word. What is clear, and I think this is also important to keep in mind, what is clear from these two depictions, this beast is satanic in every way. His true allegiance is to Satan. He stands with darkness. That's why he's depicted the way he is. He stands with darkness. On his head, the name of blasphemy, a total disregard for all that is God, irreverent in every way to the sacred and to the right. His intelligence, his wisdom, and all his efforts are directed against God. The Roman emperors Arrogation of titles pertaining to God, pertaining to deity, would apply to this discussion. Their accepting of worship was just as obnoxious to God-fearing people, to Christians, who recognize the only true sovereign, the only true God is Jehovah, is Yahweh, in Christ His Son. This was irreverent to the Godhead. Barclay, on his information, I want you to appreciate this. And we have alluded to some of this before, but I want to bring it to your attention once more. Every emperor, every Roman emperor, was called divus or sebastos, which means divine. Divine. Frequently, the very name of God or Son of God was given to an emperor. And Nero himself, on his coins, had the Savior of the world on his coins. That's Nero. For any man to call himself divine was a blasphemous insult to God. Further, the later emperors took on the title in Latin, Dominos, or Greek equivalent, Kyrios, which I know you guys are fluent in Latin, as I, of course, am, and in Greek as well, as I make up random English gibberish. Both of those mean Lord. Both of those words mean Lord. In the Old Testament, it was the same as the special title of God Himself. In the New Testament, it's the title often given to Jesus Christ. You see what they're doing. You see what's being done. You see why He's described the way He's described. This beast, the Roman Empire, is taking all that is sacred, all that is right, all that is holy and set apart to distinguish God from man and Jesus Christ from man. They have taken those things for themselves, ascribing themselves as God and Son of God and as Lord Christ. I hope you remember some of that as we went through the chapters 2 and chapter 3. We made that point quite often. It was bow to Lord Caesar instead of Lord Christ. That was the challenge. That was the challenge. And so here, this beast has on his heads the names of blasphemy. Notice verse 2. Verse 2, the beast which I saw was like a leopard. His feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. It seems without question that John's vision here is the fourth beast of Daniel's. Do you still have Daniel 7 open? Daniel chapter 7, let's begin reading in verse 2 once more. Daniel saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion, and had eagle's wings. I watched till its wings were plucked off, and I was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up from among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked off by the roots. And there in its horns were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. Jump down, by the way, I hope you can see the connections there. Jump down to verse 17. This is Daniel 7 and verse 17. Those great beasts, which are 4 kings which arise out of the earth. Just kind of pocket that. 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. Now jump down to verse 19. I know we're jumping all over, but stick with me here. Verse 19. Then I wished to know the truth about the fourth beast, which was different from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, with its teeth of iron, its nails of bronze, which devoured, broke in pieces, and trampled the residue with its feet, and the 10 horns which were on its head, and the other horn which came up, before which 3 fell, namely that horn which had eyes and a mouth which spoke pompous words, whose appearance was greater than his fellows. I was watching, and the same horn was making war against the saints, and prevailing against them, until, boy, this is a good turn of events, until the Ancient of Days came, And the judgment was made in favor of the saints of the Most High, and the time came for the saints to possess the kingdom. Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be a fourth kingdom on earth, which shall be different from the other kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, trample it, and break it in pieces. The 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from his kingdom. And another shall rise after them. He shall be different from the first ones, and shall subdue 3 kings. He shall speak pompous words against the Most High, and shall persecute the saints of the Most High, and shall intend to change times and law. Then the saints shall be given into his hand for, notice now, time and times and half a time. But the court shall be seated, and they shall take away his dominion to consume and destroy it forever. Then the kingdom and dominion and the greatness of the kingdoms under the whole heaven shall be given to the people, the saints of the Most High. His kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Do you see the connections? Kind of hard to miss. I know I read through it a little quicker than I normally would like to, but do you see the connections? The fourth beast of Daniel 7 is the beast of Revelation 13, the Roman Empire. The beast that shall speak pompous words against the Most High, shall persecute the saints, shall overcome the saints for time, times, and half a time. Same discussion. Same discussion. This beast shall be a conqueror of kingdoms. And yet, when the Ancient of Days come, he will stomp it out. The most likely explanation of the 4 kingdoms are these 4 empires: the Babylonian, Medo-Persian, the Macedonian or Greek Empire under Alexander the Great, and then the Roman Empire. John's vision in chapter 13 is essentially a composite sketch of all the 3 beasts that preceded it. Notice that verse. This is Revelation 13, verse 2. He sees a leopard, his feet were like the feet of a bear, his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him his power, throne, and great authority. So here we see in John's vision, this creature who encompasses all those kingdoms who were removed or replaced before him. Because essentially what each empire did, folks, was replaced the one that came before it. Those 4, the Babylonian was replaced by the Medo-Persian, the Medo-Persian was replaced by the Grecian, and then the Roman Empire came and took all of it as it made itself the beast. Now, here is a plain introduction of the Roman Empire as an instrument of Satan's diabolical and blasphemous power, cruelty, and opposition to God's kingdom. In the mighty, worldwide Roman Empire was combined all the tearing power of Chaldea, which is the lion, the crushing force of the Medo-Persian, which is the bear, and the swift and ferocious character of the Macedonia, or the Grecian Empire under Alexander the leopard. The beast symbolizes all the anti-God opposition by force that could ever be brought against God's people. Here it is, all in one. But to John and the saints to whom he wrote, it personified the Roman Empire. All of these creatures are encompassed in this one sketch of the beast who opposes God and opposes God's people. Now, as this creature is described, much like chapter 12 with the dragon, it is overwhelming. He's depicted as an overwhelming creature. Who can stand against him? Who has a chance? Well, the overwhelming reminder is the Ancient of Days does. God, as he sits and rules upon his throne. I want you to appreciate briefly. No, you're not going to get to appreciate it briefly. No guess. I'll go ahead and give it to you anyways. All scholarship agrees that that is the 4 empires. The Babylonian, the Medo-Persian, the Macedonian, and the Roman empires. All scholarship agrees it's those 4 empires. The problem is they don't agree on anything beyond that. Nothing can be agreed upon after that. Some conclude this is the beast of John's day with the Roman Empire. Some conclude that this is some great eschatological event that will take place in the future. As the end time approaches, this great beast will show up from the sea, and maybe even a literal sea, and boy, we just get further and further in left field, and we're not even playing baseball anymore. So we need to pull it in, keep it in its context, but I did want you to at least appreciate all scholarship agrees that those 4 empires are the 4 beasts of Daniel's vision culminating in Revelation 13 and John's vision. I'll leave you with this. God sits on his throne. There's the reminder. Jesus reigns. What all this is happening. It's all incredible. It's fascinating. It's mesmerizing. Okay, rein it in. Point is, Jesus wins. There it is. Book of Revelation in a nutshell. Appreciate your kind attention. We will pick up a few other things in verse 2 I want to discuss, and then we'll move on through the rest of the chapter. Appreciate your attention this morning.